My name is Dustin.
And my name is Jessica.
We are the Popcorn Poops. Here at Popcorn Poops HQ, we produce a movie podcast and commentary track hybrid that may be synced up to whatever film we're talking about or enjoyed as a standalone audio program.
Today we will be watching the 1998 film The Big Lebowski, directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. If you are syncing this recording up to the movie, go ahead and start the film and then press pause as soon as the Universal logo completely fades to black.
It's time to start the movie. Syncers, press play at the beep after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And we're rolling.
You did a good job, Dustin. You know what you did?
What did I do?
You picked a movie that I like.
Oh, for once.
No, I like the other movies you picked.
Let's see if you can pick a movie that I like sometime. No, you do a good job of picking movies I like.
I mean, thus far, mostly. I don't think we've really subjected each other to
except for Buffy the
anything.
Vampire Slayer and Willow and.
I thought you liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Willow.
No, I do. They're pretty good.
We haven't actually done that yet. We haven't actually subjected each other to movies that the other one absolutely hates yet. It will happen.
Waiting for the day that you're like Queen of the Damned.
Yeah,
we're doing it.
It's gonna happen.
Please don't do that to me. This is my pick for this week, and it is the Coen Brothers' The Big Lebowski. Probably.
Is this your favorite Coen Brothers movie?
It might be. I don't know. I think it's probably their most accessible movie. Not that their movie... Well, no, I take that back. I think probably something like The Lady Killers or Intolerable Cruelty or one of their more mainstream Hollywood rom-com kind of things, which they haven't done a whole bunch of. That would probably be their most accessible work. But this is... I mean, I think this is up there. But despite that, I think it has its idiosyncrasies and its charms. And I really, really love this movie, as do most people in my situation, people of the cinephile persuasion, I think. What do you think about this movie?
I love this movie. It's a great story.
It is, isn't it?
It's a great story. And when something's
kind of
a great
old
story, then
right?
it is. It's an old story. Mm-hmm. And it's a great story. It's really well written. And when something's really well written, then it's hard for me not to like it. Yeah. Again, it's not a genre film, so it's never going to fall into a category of something that I'm like, I really want to watch The Big Lebowski. It's a genre film, but it's not.
It's a crime movie. Some would even say it's a noir film.
Right. But those are definitely not genres that I watch. So
right. So it's not one of your genres.
It's not one of my genre films.
But yeah, I really like this movie, and we'll get into kind of like all the little details of why it belongs in the different genres that it belongs in. But right now we're looking at a shot of our protagonist, our hero of sorts. Can you call him that? I guess he is the hero.
The dude?
Yeah, the dude.
Yeah, he's the hero.
The dude played by Jeff Bridges, which...
He's the protagonist, at least.
Oh, certainly. I feel like this is the performance that has defined every performance of Jeff Bridges.
What did he do before this?
Henceforth, he was in Tron, where he
like the old Tron?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's basically the main character. Well, he's not the main character. He's the one who disappears into the game.
I've never seen the old Tron.
Yeah, it's not that good. I'm gonna get so much shit for that. It's not that good.
I actually haven't even seen the new Tron. I put it on, and then I really liked the soundtrack, but I didn't watch the movie, and then I just listened to the soundtrack. He
was also in a movie about a biopic about a guy named Tucker who built a car that was really like famous. I think the movie is called Tucker, A Man and His Dream or something like that.
Before I forget, so the music that was playing just now, Tumbling Tumbleweeds. Yeah. Do you know the trivia about the music in this movie?
I mean, I know that T-Bone Walker was the he wanted to be called the music archivist on this, but
that's not the trivia I'm hinting at.
Okay, well, what's the trivia?
The trivia I'm hinting at is that all the songs that are played in this movie can be heard on the radio in throughout the movie. Like
I did know that.
It's music from the real world of this movie world.
It's what they call incidental music, and it's also. As far as like theater philosophy or drama philosophy goes, it's what you would call like a realist take. Did we just miss the line?
We did. We missed it.
Okay, so one of the people that pees on the dude's rugs, his name is Woo. His character's name is Woo. What did he just say?
Ever thus to deadbeats, Lebowski.
And what is that? What that sounds so familiar.
No, go ahead. You can go ahead and talk about it.
I guess you don't have notes on it.
No, I do, but I'm going to let you say the Latin because I can't. So.
Oh, I don't even have. Oh, it's a Sic Semper Tyrannis. So, Wu, the Asian thug that has just peed on the dude's rug, said, "Ever thus to deadbeats Lebowski." So this is kind of a play on the Latin phrase "Sic Semper Tyrannis," thus always to tyrants, which it was allegedly spoken by the murderers of Julius Caesar and Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
During their assassinations.
Well, allegedly.
Allegedly.
It was said by Abraham Lincoln's assassins.
But that is an interesting little literary twist on what is otherwise kind of it's a pretty goofy comedy, but it's also a very smart comedy. There's a lot of smart stuff. But there's a lot of stuff
in here that until I did research on this movie, I would have said that this was a goofy comedy, and now I am completely.
It's very
I feel
good.
Totally different.
I think The Big Lebowski is very good, and I think the Coen brothers in general, when they do comedies, when they do overt comedies like things like Burn After Reading and whatnot. I think they're really good at masking their comedies as goofy, accessible, kind of R-rated comedies, when in fact there are lots of layers and lots of homages and literary references and things that your average moviegoer won't get. And even someone like me who's really interested in film and all the things that influence film and inspire film and that kind of thing. I don't get all of them. So when I do research on this, like you said, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it changed. Doing research on this film changed my perspective of this film because now I have a theory about this film. So, but I'll get into that later.
Okay.
I'll get into my theory later. Let's talk about The Stranger because he gave his little opening narrative.
Sure. The narration in the opening of the movie was done by an actor named Sam Elliott. Who has a couple of meta moments, a couple of meta lines in the movie that I think is very fun about him as an actor.
What do you think he is? What is The Stranger? Who is The Stranger? I was trying to find stuff about him online, like people's opinions of what they think, and
who he is or what he is.
I've heard everything from he's God to he's a personification of the West, whereas the dude is a personification of like LA in the 60s.
I think maybe, I think like the God thing is pretty it's a lazy interpretation. Yeah. I think there's I could say
there was this whole thing about the people were talking about like the dude is Jesus and the stranger is God. Sure. And
he only shows up, if you count the opening narration, he only shows up 3 times in the film. So in the opening narration, once halfway through the film and once at the very end of the film. And I think, and that's an important shot right there where Donnie makes the strike.
Yes, Donnie always strikes. Did you know that? Except for once.
Until the end, and we'll talk about that too. But I think that another lazy examination of the stranger as a character could be that he is the chorus in in the Greek tragedy sense of a chorus.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's also pretty lazy. I don't know that he's anything.
Not as lazy though.
It's not as lazy.
It's really easy to be like, oh, it's Jesus.
This God. He's totally look at Jesus' mustache.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful scene right here where they're discussing the rug that has been, in the words of David Hiddleston, who comes up later, the rug that has been micturated upon.
Also, the dude never bowls in this movie.
He doesn't.
He never once is shown.
He's putting on his clown shoes, though.
Yeah, but he's never going to throw the ball.
Little fun fact about you.
Oh, no. I really?
You were somewhat of an avid bowler in your can I say virile years? You're still quite virile, aren't you? In your younger years.
Yeah, I was.
And
I was pretty good.
I guess when you were in junior high and high school,
I had all my books paid for the first couple of years of college from
all the
winning
scholarships
tournaments
and stuff like that.
So, I never bowled a 300 though.
Okay, all right. I mean, that's a thing.
Like
that's kind of a
287.
Sure, that's like a high watermark for bowlers, as I understand it. I don't bowl that much. I guess my average is like $1.70 or something like that. That's not very good, is it?
What, 170?
Yeah, is that bad?
I doubt your average is that high.
Is that high?
That's too high.
Okay, maybe it's like 6.
No, wait, no. At my top, my highest average was like 205. No, 215 was my highest average. So But
so I
doubt you were 170.
I know there isn't a whole lot of bowling in this film. There is kind of the image of bowling, but how do you think it stands up to what you think of bowling?
My experience from bowling is very different from the rest of the world because I was a kid who was doing it as my high school and junior high school sport.
Well, these guys are in a league.
Yeah, but there are like two types of bowling. There are like the people who are, for whatever reason, like me, that think they're going to be serious about it, and then there are people who it's their pastime and they do this every week and they drink beer and they smoke cigarettes and it's like it's their church, it's their commune. Like this is where they go and they socialize.
It's an interesting way to put it.
And it's usually older men who do it. But for me, I was in this weird place where I was like a preteen and a teenager, and we were all in it competitively, and we were traveling to tournaments and stuff like that, and on teams, on high school teams.
This is the ultimate question, though. Which film portrays bowling better, The Big Lebowski or Kingpin?
I've never seen Kingpin. So.
Oh, what? All right.
Wait, maybe I did.
It's got Bill Murray in it.
Yeah,
and he's got a terrible comb over.
Maybe I did.
And a bowling ball that has a rose.
Does something terrible happen in that movie?
Lots of terrible. It's a Farrelly Brothers comedy. Lots of terrible things happen.
Lots of people die, maybe?
Oh, no. I don't think lots of people die, no.
I don't know. I don't know if I've seen it then.
All right.
Is it really foul, like foul-mouthed?
It's a Farrelly Brothers comedy, so yes, it's very foul.
That doesn't mean anything to me.
I don't know that it's... I think it's PG-13. I think it's still PG-13, though. The Big Lebowski is an R-rated
I don't know,
comedy.
but I know I love this movie. And also, I love this character who just popped up here.
It's Philip Seymour Hoffman, the late, great
His line with
Philip
Bunny
Seymour
is
Hoffman.
one of my favorite lines in movies.
Ever?
Ever.
That's marvelous.
Marvelous. That's the best reaction to someone saying something horrible.
I don't realize how fast this movie kind of moves along because I've got so many notes that we've just totally blown past. One of the things that I really love about this movie, and one of the things that I don't know that was intended, I'm sure it was because the Coen brothers are smart people. I think this might be one of the greatest period pieces of all time.
Yeah?
As a photograph of the early 90s and as a photograph of the different types of baby boomers, like in this period. We're about 25, 30 years out from Vietnam, and we have a Vietnam vet. We have the dude who later refers to himself as a pacifist and kind of groups himself with the conscientious objectors of the Vietnam War. And you've got this dichotomy, and I think what's really interesting about this film as a period piece that sets it apart from other films that set out to be period pieces. Right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of The Wedding Singer, which is comedy made in the 90s set in the 80s that's very fucking 80s. You know what I mean? Like the whole soundtrack is 80s music. They make references to
and
the
like
80s.
80s singers and stuff pop up in it, and
exactly, yeah. Billy Idol's in the movie and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine that they're trying to build the world like that. But I think that this is interesting as a period piece because everything that comes before it informs this particular time period and these particular characters. And I think that it's what sets itself in this time period in an effective way is that it's not just about what's happening right this very moment. We get little TV clips and bits of President George Bush talking about the invasion in Kuwait and stuff like that.
And Saddam Hussein pops up.
Saddam Hussein pops up in a dream sequence.
Because Bush talked about him, and also I think Walter mentions him too.
Yeah, and they talk about the Gulf War, they talk about the invasion in Kuwait, and they talk about Desert Storm and all that kind of stuff. And I think this movie is really a great snapshot of the 90s, not because it is the 90s, but of all of the things that inform it before. Even the soundtrack.
The things that happened that made the 90s what they were.
Exactly. Right. Especially for these characters, because the soundtrack is very
for adults
too.
For adults in the 90s too, because usually a lot of movies are about young people, much younger people, like 20s or younger. And so we've got a movie here that's about people who are how old is he here? How old do you think they're supposed to be?
40.
Okay, and so these are
40-ish.
These are people who are already adults during this time period, but they're living in this decade, and they have to deal with what it's like to live in this decade as an adult, and and that's going to be what it's like to live in this decade while knowing all the stuff you knew about the previous decades.
This is David Hiddleston right here. I know him from one other film, and that would be Santa Claus the Movie, starring John Lithgow, Dudley Moore, and David Hiddleston. Also Burgess Meredith. I think I made a reference to Burgess Meredith in the last episode we did about Willow with the high Aldwin. He looked like Burgess Meredith in the Santa Claus movie, and now we've got David Hiddleston from the Santa Claus movie.
We're about to hit my favorite line. One of my all-time favorite lines in all movies ever. Oh, and also I love that he steals this rug by just saying that he was told he could pick a rug.
It's very doodly.
And so he steals it.
It's doodly of him.
She's painting her toenails to match her tie-dyed lime green bikini, which is super 90s.
I also kind of like that I like and I hate that they cast Tara Reid. And all the reasons that I hate it are the reasons that it's perfect casting. I think she's an awful, awful actress. She is just the worst. And she's
a nihilist.
And she's in this movie, and I think about the fact that she's in this movie working with these. I mean, she's just surrounded by incredible Academy Award nominated and Academy Award winning actors and actresses, and she's just terrible. But I'm concerned that this might be the first film that really sucks us in too much.
Sorry.
And I know
Sorry.
you had to hear
That's
the
marvelous.
line. That's marvelous.
He has to pay $100.
Yeah, I don't love Tara Reid as an actress, but I think she's kind of perfect in the role, and I think that
she was originally going to be cast as someone else was going to play her. Who was it?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
I didn't write it down because I assumed that you knew.
I wish you had written it down.
I don't remember because I don't care about actors and actresses, so I don't know who it was, but it was someone else. It's someone like Charlize Theron or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, that would.
I just pulled that out of my ass. It's probably really wrong, but
I think Charlize Theron would probably she would definitely have fit in with this cast a lot better.
I really don't know who it was, but someone else was supposed to play her, but then she played her.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Do you know? Let's see if I can find it. Do you know how many times they say "fuck" in this movie? Because I do.
I have it written down somewhere, but how many? It's like 160 something.
No, it's in its various forms. It is said 292 times, more than Scarface.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's I'm not surprised, but I don't know. I think in a movie like Scarface, the word "fuck."
Oh, are they like writing down their scores?
Oh yeah, you never experienced this, did you?
No, I was.
Do you know how to score bowling?
No, I don't even know how to do it.
Oh really?
Yeah,
interesting.
I never had to. We had computers that did it all for us.
Each pin is a point, right?
I don't know. Sure.
That's how it works. He says mark it an 8. There are 9 pins, right? You know how many pins there are, don't you?
Yes.
So when he says mark it an 8, he keeps saying, Rocky keeps saying...
He pulled out a gun.
He did. He's very upset. He said that his foot was over the line. And Rocky's like, bullshit, dude, mark it 8. And
it should also be known that we're
drinking
alcohol during this episode.
That's true. We are drinking. We're not drinking White Russians as we
should be.
We probably should be drinking White Russians. We're just drinking beer.
But it's special beer.
Yes, it is a special fall brand of Keating, which is quite a good Japanese beer. But we're not even drinking the dude's favorite beer, which is Miller.
Right. Really?
Yeah. When he drinks beer, he drinks Miller in this movie, and when he's not drinking beer, he's drinking White Russians. Which, just so everyone knows, to make a good White Russian, you do 2 parts vodka, 1 part coffee liqueur like Kahlua, and 1 part cream or milk. But if you really want to make a White Russian that's not too strong and super super delicious, you do only 1 part vodka, 1 part Kahlua, and 1 part cream, like real heavy whipping cream. Yeah,
White Russians are delicious, but only as a dessert for me.
No way. I could drink them all day.
No.
They're so good.
No way.
This movie turned me on to White Russians. Like I think this movie turned a lot of people on to White Russians.
Did the cops just show up because Walter pulled out a gun in the bowling alley?
Yes, that's what they're doing.
But they're already sitting in the car.
The dude in the bowling alley, he said, they're calling the cops, man. Put the piece away. And they kind of don't really escape. They just like, oh, we got to get out of here. And they're sitting in the car. This exchange here is really great. Where Walter's like, I'm calmer than you. He keeps yelling at him, calmer than you.
So we already talked about how the dude does not have a job. We didn't talk about it, but in the movie they've already, addressed that topic where he doesn't have he's unemployed. That's
what he says to the Big Lebowski.
So his source of income is a mystery throughout this movie. However, it was not in the original script.
Yeah, I knew that.
So what in the original? Also, this photo here. Do you know who that is? The bowler.
That's Richard Nixon. Of course, yes, I know who that is.
I didn't know that there was a basement bowling alley in the White House.
I didn't know that, but that photo is apparently a very famous publicity photo of Richard Nixon bowling in the. He was an avid bowler, and there's apparently a bowling alley in the White House, or there was when he was president.
He has so much Kahlua on his shelf.
Yes, he does.
That's a lot of Kahlua.
And he uses Smirnoff. Smirnoff? Do you say Smirnoff
I
or
say Smirnoff?
Smirnoff.
But I don't know.
If you want to be a snoot about it, it's pronounced Smirnoff. This is his landlord. This mousy fellow right here, mousy balding gentleman, is his landlord. And there's actually a pretty funny scene with him later on where he's performing the dance quintet, his cycle, as he calls it, in this scene right here. But this does kind of reinforce something that I think is interesting about the whole movie. The movie is, as is common with noir films, it is told from the perspective of the dude. We are the audience is the dude. We haven't even addressed this.
Explain what you mean. It's a noir film. So I didn't know that till I did research. And then...
So this movie is very, very heavily inspired by the novels and screenplays by mostly by a man named Raymond Chandler, who probably most famously wrote The Big Sleep.
And as I understand, this movie is pretty close to The Big Sleep. Like
narratively,
it runs a lot of parallels, especially in the characters.
Right. So think of it as kind of a heightened noir in a way, and a heightened comedic noir, if you will, because it kind of works in all of those ways. We've got a lot of the same tropes that run through the movie. We've got a crime plot at its center. We've got a man that's kind of dragged into this whole mess, and then the whole movie is kind of told from his perspective, which was common with noir films. Now the thing that's interesting to me is that because this movie is told from his perspective, I think that one of the things that runs through the movie is that the dude doesn't really know what's happening around him at any given time. And one of the things that clues us into this is that I don't think he knows what day of the week it is ever. I don't think the audience is supposed to know the timeline of the film. Like, we understand the timeline of events that happen throughout the movie, but as far as like what day of the week things happen, when things happen on like a specific concrete timeline, we don't really know. And the first time he meets with the Big Lebowski, he very obviously says, what day of the week is it? The Big Lebowski says, do you go out like this, on a weekday? And the dude's like, well, what day is it? I don't even know what day it is. And then his landlord comes to the door, and his landlord tells him that the dance will take place on a Tuesday. It's a really weird kind of throwaway line, and they kind of pass it off as, I think, like a speech impediment of his landlord. But his landlord says Tuesday, as in kind of a halfway between Thursday and Tuesday. Yeah.
So maybe it's from his perspective.
From his perspective,
where he doesn't really know what day it is, what's going on.
Exactly, and
but like, that falls into my theory about the movie too, though.
Well, but other things come up later on when Walter talks about the fact that he's a converted Jew and he doesn't bowl on Sabbath, which is Shabbos. But Shabbos begins on sundown at Friday night. So we don't know exactly what day of the week it is that he's not supposed to bowl, depending on, whenever their league match, the time of their league match. If the time of their league match is after sundown on Friday, that's technically the Sabbath, as I understand it. I might be wrong about that. So I think that all of these things lead to this idea or this feeling that the dude and the audience, by virtue of the fact that they're watching this or they're experiencing this film through the eyes of the dude, they don't know what day of the week it is. They don't know where they are at any given moment. They don't know when they are at any given moment specifically. And I think that kind of contributes to the feeling of this movie.
It really
but
is
you said
supposed to
it
be.
played into your theory about this movie somehow.
Yeah, which I'll get into more later, but it basically I believe that this movie is it's loosely
nice
based.
Coke
it's
nail
loosely
he's
based
got
on this. I think it's this guy whose
Jesus,
whose bulge in his pants is made out of a sack of bird seed. So, someone.
This actor is named John Turturro.
Yes. This is the guy who the gigantic bulge in his pants.
Yes, playing a character by the name of Jesus Quintana.
Is made by a sack of birdseed.
I love that he's a Latino, but he pronounces his name in the English way.
Right.
He doesn't say Jesus. He says Jesus.
Here we go with the bulge. We're gonna see it really hardcore.
Really
right there.
prominent bulge of birdseed.
Yeah. Anyway, so
God, he's so greasy.
So I really believe that this is a reinterpretation of The Big Sleep and with mix-ins from other famous noir films.
Sure.
But it has a existentialist and nihilist twist to it, which I'll go into a lot more later. But anyways, about it being about the big sleep, even Joel Cohen said, the quote I have from him is, "We wanted to do a Chandler kind of story, how it moves episodically and deals with the characters trying to unravel a mystery, as well as having a hopeless plot that's ultimately unimportant." Which let's remember that ultimately unimportant right there, because that's where my existentialist theories are going to tie into this.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, though, we didn't finish what we were saying before about his income. How in a previous draft of the script, in the original draft, he was the heir to the Rubik's Cube fortune.
Of course he was.
Of course he was.
What a weird little nugget. I mean that of course I can understand why they don't add that, why that didn't make it into the film, because it really doesn't have anything to do with anything. It just kind of colors the dude and colors the world. But yeah, it's that, I think that would fit. Like, I think it shows that even in the planning stages and in early drafts of the script, they had a grasp of what kind of character the dude was going to be, who was actually based on a couple of real world people.
You know, he just got the plot right. He got the twist right. He said she probably kidnapped herself.
Oh, everything that Walter says about the plot, Walter is 100% right about, despite the fact that Walter is a buffoon. And as the audience, we are misled because everything that Walter says, he says with such harumph.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you think that he's a blowhard. You consider him a blowhard, and you don't want to side with Walter because he seems like an idiot. He seems like the buffoon that he is. But everything that he says about the plot is 100% correct.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So even later on, when they get the tow, they receive a tow as kind of a threat from the kidnappers, quote unquote kidnappers of Bunny Lebowski. Walter he's still incredulous, and he says things like, "Dude, I can get you a tow. I could get you a tow today by 3:00 with nail polish."
So we just got to shut the fuck up, Donnie.
Oh yes.
That's a reference to Steve Buscemi's character in Fargo.
Yes, who never
Carl
stops talking.
Showalter.
Yes.
Yeah, who just talks the whole time. Fargo is probably my favorite Coen Brothers movie.
That's a great one.
It's probably my favorite.
That would probably be more openly accepted in the cinephile community as an appropriate favorite Coen Brothers film.
I like it.
I think
always
the Big
describe it
Lebowski
as,
is like, oh, everyone loves that because it's a cult movie.
I remember when we were first dating somewhere, or
it wasn't when we were several
first.
Days. Yeah, it was like several years ago. You were in college.
And I was trying to think of the name of Fargo, and I couldn't. And I was like, it's that movie where it's really cold, and they say fuck a lot, and somebody gets put in a wood chipper. Fargo.
I don't know if part of what goes into my theory about the audience not supposed, and that's the first shot of Julianne Moore as Maud Lebowski. And this is our first dream sequence of which
How many are there?
There's two. There are two.
Only two?
So there's this one, and then there's one later that is meant to resemble like the opening credits of kind of a high-budget porno, directed by a character named Jackie Treehorn in this movie, who's kind of part of the plot. Central to the plot? Yeah, kind of central to the plot. One of the things I wanted to say, though, is that goes into my theory about the audience not being able to understand when the events take place, or like when exactly this takes place in the real world, has to do with the check that dude writes at the beginning of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, dude writes a check for 69 cents at the grocery store at Ralph's, where he buys the half and half for his White Russians.
Yeah.
And on the TV, as he's writing the check, he sees George Bush giving "This aggression will not stand" speech, which he regurgitates later. That's also like an ongoing thing where the dude continues to regurgitate things that he
Well, the
hears.
second dream sequence is all things that have happened.
Exactly.
To a T.
They're all things that he has seen, and they're all things that
even like the tiling
exactly.
and stuff on the floor.
Yeah, all of the stuff like ties into things that he's seen before. But also part of his character is that he hears things that people say and he regurgitates them later. Sometimes in proper context, sometimes not.
Out of context.
Not so much. The weird thing is that was a real interview, obviously, that President Bush gave on the White House lawn on Sunday, August 5th, 1990. That was 3 days after the Iraqi army invaded Kuwait. The dude's check, he writes, however, is dated September 11th, 1991. So this could indicate that it's just kind of a date flub up, or it's that the dude is so broke or he doesn't have enough money that he has to post date a 69-cent check by over a year. Because that's when that, the broadcast came across with George Bush. So it's.
I also read that the check is dated exactly 10 years before the 9/11 attack,
which no one could have known.
No, but people like to talk about it as a conspiracy theory on the internet.
It is kind of a coincidence that the check is dated exactly 10 years before 9/11, which led us into what many consider to be the second Gulf War. And this movie kind of has the background of the first Gulf War in it. But at the same time, he writes the date as, 9/11, 1991. And then when he speaks to his landlord reminds him that tomorrow is the 10th. So whether or not he's in 1991 or 1990, he is still post-dated the check. At least as early as a couple of days later, or as far in the future as like a year later, depending on whether or not the broadcast was like a pre-recorded thing,
or if it was live.
Yeah, exactly. But I think all that kind of plays into my idea.
They say "man" 147 times in this movie.
That's a lot of mans.
Just so you know. 147
this phone
times.
that he uses, this huge mobile phone, I don't know what model it is. I think it's like a Motorola, early 90s Motorola something. As I understand it, this movie is set in like 1990, 1991, something like that. The Stranger refers to it as the early 90s. The movie was shot and released in 1998, or maybe it was shot in 97, released in 98. But I think this movie is not very anachronistic at all. Like I think that it's pretty accurate to the time as far as technology and stuff like that goes.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any goofs or anything like that on the internet that say, oh, well, they totally didn't have this thing in 1991 yet.
Yeah, I didn't see anything like that. This car is a Ford Torino. Okay. Now, here's the only thing I care about this car. They use two cars. They use two Ford Torinos to make this movie.
Sure.
One of them gets destroyed in the movie when it gets bashed up. The other one was destroyed later in an X-Files episode.
Oh, cool.
Season 8, episode 9, called Salvage.
Have you seen that episode?
I'm not in season 8. I'm in season 5.
Okay.
So.
You've been watching the X-Files.
I have.
For the past couple of months.
Yeah.
And really enjoying it, I guess?
Yeah, I love the X-Files.
Right on.
It's probably, well, not the best. One of the best sci-fi shows I've ever gotten into.
So right here we're watching Dude and Walter driving down the road, and they're about to throw out the ransom money for Bunny Lebowski, who has been kidnapped by somebody. And Walter's brilliant idea is that that they should throw out a ringer, that they should throw out a bag full of his dirty underwear.
Is a ringer a thing from noir films? I didn't look that up.
It's not a thing from noir films. It's just it's a diversion, or it's a fake of.
Yeah, I mean, I get what it means, but I was wondering.
I don't know if
it
it's
was
from
like
noir films.
If that
That's
was
a good
like
question.
a term that they used in noir films.
I don't know when it was coined, so I couldn't say for sure. But yeah, he's going to end up throwing out his bag of dirty underwear, and the sequence just most of these. One thing that's really interesting to me is that the dude's car gets messed up quite a bit in this movie. Like, he has a couple of wrecks, and there's quite a bit of damage that happens to it. And I think that most of the time it's Walter's fault. I think most of the time the damage that dude's car that happens to dude's car is because of Walter. This was the shot, that right there, the shot of the bridge was our teaser shot for this episode. If anyone was able to guess that from our Twitter or Facebook, then you're a true Big Lebowski fan. Or you were really lucky and said, "Oh, that kind of looks like the bridge from that one weird scene from the Big Lebowski." Yep. So, dude just crashed into the pole.
They did just crash, and
that's totally Walter's fault.
Here come our.
We don't know who they are yet, but they are the nihilists.
The nihilists,
right? They're German, I guess.
Yes, German nihilists. They're German nihilists. Do you? So, I guess we can go ahead and talk about it because I'll want to bring it up as we go. But
we totally missed it. But in the car, dude tells tells Walter to shut the fuck up, like Walter does to Donnie. And I think that kind of implies
like
a hierarchy.
The ranking
there's a hierarchy, I think.
In their trio.
I think dude is clearly at the top of the hierarchy, and then it's Walter, and then Donnie.
Smoking while bowling.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's really impressive.
It's truly the early 90s. Are there any bowling alleys that allow smoking anymore?
That you can smoke inside anymore? I don't know. You could still smoke in the bowling alley I went to when I was in high school. Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, there were certain areas where you weren't supposed to smoke, but...
Maybe there are smoking lanes.
Yes, actually there were.
Were there smoking lanes?
There were smoking lanes.
Okay.
Huh. Now I'm sure it's all totally
I'm sure it's
non-smoking.
totally, yeah. Well, of course, it can't be anymore. In the state of Tennessee, at
because
least, where we grew up.
Because they serve food, right? What's the rule in Tennessee?
I'm not sure exactly.
Something like that. In Japan, they finally started doing it. In Japan, up until like a month or two ago, you could still smoke in McDonald's.
Yeah, but McDonald's changed their policy. That wasn't a law.
Ah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
But that has nothing to do with the Big Lebowski.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
So in this scene, everything that happens up until dude basically gets rid of the phone, all of the scenes...
He didn't even finish saying shut the fuck up. He just said shut the fuck.
Yeah.
Donnie, shut the fuck.
All of the scenes that happen after they throw out the ringer, the phone that the dude receives from the Big Lebowski to stay in contact with the hostage guys, the people who are holding Bunny Lebowski supposedly up for ransom. His phone keeps ringing. In all of these scenes, his phone continually rings. Through this scene, through the next scene, and through the scene after that, through the scene where he's talking to the police about his car being stolen. Once they leave the bowling alley here, he finds that his car is stolen. And through all of these scenes, his phone keeps ringing. I think that's a wonderful little comedic touch. And that, like I said before, Walter is now talking about Shabbos, which is the Jewish day of rest,
Right.
the Jewish Sabbath.
And we're gonna get an interesting reference in the fight scene later, to him when he beats up the guys at the end of the movie. We're gonna see a sign in the background that says Ben-Hur Auto Repair or something like that.
Oh, really?
And that's a reference to a famous Jewish hero, Ben-Hur. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So
I didn't
like
realize
it's
that. I didn't
supposed
know that
to
was in
it's
there.
supposed to draw an allusion to him as that character. I love their conversation. I love the way the dialogue flows in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where like sometimes I get really frustrated when people overwrite their dialogue.
I mean, it's a comedy, but are there jokes?
No, it's just the way they talk.
Yeah, it's just funny.
It's just the way they talk is just funny. And they like when dialogue is overwritten, I usually get what's that stupid TV show we used to Gilmore Girls? Is that
Oh yeah, with the
is that where it was?
rapid back and forth,
Right, where
bantery
like it's
kinda
just
talk,
like
yeah.
too much, like they're just always talking at each other and they're not really listening to each other and they're just talking and responding with like it's really irritating. But the way they do it in this movie, it's really fast, but it comes off as like I can buy it with these people. I can buy that they would talk like this.
Right.
That they're just that they're just that much of that they're characters that
I mean,
they're like.
To me, that's a case of it
His
being
phone
about.
is still ringing.
It's about through all of these scenes, his phone is still ringing. I think it's like a 50-50 case of the script and the performances.
Yeah. They
And-
play it off so naturally.
The performances in this movie are brilliant. They're really, really great. There's I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really interested. John Goodman's character Walter is supposedly based in mannerism and even on like physical appearance on a Hollywood director by the name of John Milius, who I think is probably most famous for directing the Excalibur movie. Do you remember that movie from like the late 70s, early 80s, something like that? Big Arthurian kind of epic. And I've seen pictures of John Milius, and I never made the connection before, but he looks like Walter. He looks like Walter with the big aviator glasses and the beard and the tight cropped hair and everything. And supposedly Walter is partially based on John Milius, who's a very, very conservative, pro-gun Vietnam veteran, and that the kind of character that Walter is. So right now on Netflix Instant Streaming, there's a documentary called Milius, and I'm really interested to watch it because
you want to see if it's
specifically I want to see
if it's Walter.
Right, I want to see if it's Walter.
So I just thought of something that I haven't mentioned here, but as in film noir tradition, the dude, our protagonist, our detective, is in every scene in the movie. In every single scene.
With the exception of one kind of cheat. It's kind of a cheat.
But he is in it.
He's in it.
There's one scene when the nihilists are ordering pancakes.
Yes, that's toward the end of the movie.
And the pancake ordering is also a reference to Fargo also.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Peter Stormare?
I've heard some people pronounce it Stormare, but I think it's Stormare.
Okay, well, that guy, his character in Fargo, whose name is, again, Geir Grimsrud.
Sure. I'll accept it.
He wants to eat at a pancake house, and he talks about it a lot in Fargo, and he never gets to eat at his pancake house.
This is a fake ass
and so
on Julianne Moore.
it's a reference to him.
That ass is not real.
It's not a real ass?
No.
She didn't want to show her real ass?
Nope, she wanted to show a fake ass. I don't know if these breasts are real, though, because she turns around and you get to see her breasts.
But you would show your breasts, but not your ass? Like, for me, like, priority
of, like,
things I would show for, like, ass would be on the lowest. Like,
it's like, yeah, sure, I'll show my
whatever,
ass.
my ass, right? And then after that, it would be boobs.
I don't know. The word itself makes some men uncomfortable. Vagina.
Vagina.
That's actually, I think there's really something interesting about the fact that she says that some men are uncomfortable with the word vagina, and that men won't quote unquote bat an eye when referring to his quote dick or his rod or his Johnson. But when she says Johnson, she bats her eyes and she kind of flinches at the word. Like, so it seems like Maud herself is uncomfortable with euphemisms for the penis. Oh, and again in this scene, Maud says, I think she says banging or something like that, like as a euphemism for sex, and then she says to use the parlance of our times, which dude absorbs and then he regurgitates later. As I said, he does that several times throughout the movie. He absorbs things that people say like a sponge, and then he just regurgitates them later in his, for whatever purpose, and sometimes they're not correct. I think when he says in the parlance of our times, I don't think he uses that in the correct context.
The dude is such an interesting character because he's basically like a study in character, because he okay, so let's take one of his famous phrases, the dude abides, which is a reference to Ecclesiastes 1:4.
Yes. And
the passage is, one generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. And so it's this idea that if we're believing that that's where his line comes from, which it sounds viable to me, then we're talking about no matter what happens in the world, his personality, the dude, this guy is still going to be there. There are still going to be people like the dude.
But he also like you say that the dude abides, but he also absorbs that word.
But maybe that's how he abides, is because he just takes on whatever
Sure.
is around him and he just deals with it.
Actually,
which goes into my theory of him being an existentialist.
I think it's in the scene right after this. Maud puts him in a limousine and takes him home, and then he's taken from the or he gets out of the limousine and he's dragged into another limousine which has the Big Lebowski in it, and the Big Lebowski says that that's when he receives the toe, the disembodied toe that supposedly belongs to Bunny, and the Big Lebowski says, "I will not abide another toe." And then at the very end of the film, when the stranger's talking to the dude says, "Well, the dude abides."
So that you think that's just taken from what
I think so, and I think that I think that one of the things that this movie really succeeds at comedically is creating moments to call back to, and it's constantly calling back to things from earlier.
It's good writing. That's good writing,
absolutely.
Because it means that you're planning. If you can't call back to the things that you wrote in the beginning of a movie or a book or a play or whatever, then you're not doing it right. You didn't get it. You have to be able to call back to things.
Yeah,
that's what makes it great, because then as a viewer or as a reader, you feel like you're smart. You feel like you figured it out. Like you're sitting there and you're like, oh man, that's a reference to earlier in the movie when this guy said that. Mm-hmm. And then you get this great feeling like,
it's so funny. But I just noticed this behind the dude's head in this shot. He just sat down, so you missed it. But in the shot before this, there was a painting with a huge pair of scissors.
And it's what the nihilists are wearing in.
They're not wearing. They're using. They're holding huge pairs of scissors. Yeah. In the second dream sequence.
Yes. Because the second dream sequence is all things from earlier in the movie that
things that we've seen, things that he's seen, things that the audience has seen,
that he's just regurgitating. Like the tiles are from the Big Lebowski's house.
Yeah. So the dude's style, his fashion sense is a really interesting thing. It's almost a very specific thing that I think people have been able to replicate. Especially in like cosplaying as the dude at events like
putting on the bathrobe over the
LEBOWSKI Fest. Have you read about that?
Yeah, there are a couple. What state was it in? I
think there's one in Illinois or Iowa or something like that. Maybe Indiana, and then there's a London LEBOWSKI Fest. There's one in England.
What do they do at these fests?
Drink White Russians. As I understand, I think there's one in Los Angeles too. There are a few in the world, but I believe that
they all come out in their bathrobes.
Sure, I guess. The weird thing is that a lot of these clothes actually belong to Jeff Bridges.
He just is the dude.
And that's what I'm saying. I said that at the very beginning. This performance, I think, unlocked Jeff Bridges' latent dudeness. And he's just been the dude ever since. In real life, he's basically Jeff Goldblum now, in that every performance is just him.
Just him.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum plays Jeff Goldblum.
So Jeff Bridges, who played Jeffrey Lebowski, unlocked his inner dudeness, and now he just can't stop being the dude. He just is the dude. That's it.
That's cool. Like,
if you're
gonna pick somebody to be, the dude's cool.
As much as Jeff Goldblum is Jeff Goldblum in every single movie he's in, with the exception of maybe like Wes Anderson movies, but that's a different thing. Jeff Bridges is Jeffrey Lebowski. He is. And that's just a fact. And that's part of why I want to meet him. And that's part of why he's one of my favorite actors ever. And that's weird, though, because, I would say that probably my favorite actor, or the actor that I consider to be the most talented actor working today, is probably someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, someone who just disappears into his roles and is a method actor and like totally serious about it, has like a gajillion Oscars and stuff like that. But right up there with Daniel Day-Lewis is Jeff Goldblum and Jeff Bridges. I really like the name Jeff, I guess.
I guess so.
I guess I do. But it's strange because I think that they, as actors, are on the complete opposite end of the methodology spectrum from someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, who does something different every single time he performs. Something amazing every single time he performs, and just disappears into his characters. I don't think they necessarily disappear into their characters. I just think the characters that they always play are really interesting, fun characters to watch. And I'm fine with that. Like, the performances are good, even though they're kind of the same. But I like that. And I like the dude. I'm fine with seeing Tron Legacy starring the dude. That's cool.
The thing about the dude, the reason I like the dude is I feel like I know him. I feel like I'm trying, I don't know who it is, but I swear to God, I've met him before.
Sure.
Like, I've met this guy.
He's got a weird charisma about him that you don't. I mean, you can't say that you agree
Not
with his lifestyle.
Not people in my generation,
yeah.
but somebody, in our parents' generation. Like, I've met him before.
I mean, he's a schlub. That's what you would call him. He's kind of a schlub. He's a slacker. He's, this definitely belongs in that 90s genre of films known as the slacker films. But I don't know, there's a weird kind of charisma to him that I think that you would want to be friends with him. You know what I mean?
It would be really easy to be friends with him.
Sure. And that's all on him, I think. It's just in his nature, it seems.
Including this White Russian here, and including the one he drops later in the movie, he has 9 White Russians throughout the film.
Okay.
Another fun piece of trivia is Bridges, whenever he would go on set and he would get ready to do a performance, he would ask the Coen brothers, did the dude burn one on the way over?
I saw that.
And if they said yes, he would rub his knuckles over his eyes to make it look like he was stoned.
Well, that proves that he's not a method actor, because if they said yes, he would have been like, all right,
and
give me
go
10
get
minutes.
Stoned.
He'd go get stoned. So he just received the disembodied toe from the Big Lebowski, and now the dude and Walter are sitting in a little cafe. This is
a famous cafe, isn't it?
It is a famous cafe because it's a real-life cafe that exists in Hollywood that is only open for filming.
That's cool.
It doesn't exist for any other purpose but to be a location.
But I mean, that's really cool because, you're always going to have the street traffic and stuff, and it's just going to be there for filming, and it looks real, so that's cool.
But yeah, this is the scene in which Walter says, he's continually incredulous about the whole situation with Bunny Lebowski and the whole ransom plot and all that kind of thing, and he says in this scene, I can get you a toe, dude. A toe is nothing. A toe doesn't matter. I can get you a toe by 3:00 this afternoon with nail polish. And the dude doesn't have any. Doesn't really buy it. I think the dude's very, very worried at this point. And he, over the course of this movie, learns what it's like to be undude-ly or undude-like, where he's just not very chill and calm anymore, and he's very uptight.
He has to do stuff that he doesn't want to do.
I never noticed that before. Did you just see what happened?
What?
He pulled money out of his pocket and threw change on the counter, and he threw a joint on the counter as well and picked it right back up and put it into his pocket.
No.
I've never noticed that before. That was great. Poor Walter can't keep his calm. He's got some kind of PTSD, I guess, from the Vietnam War. That's part of his character's flaw, is that he relates everything to Vietnam.
Yeah. Always going back to it. And so much so that the dude is always saying, what does this have to do with Vietnam? Why are we talking about Vietnam? Yeah. And I love that he's taking a girl bath. I mean, this is totally a girl bath right here. He's got candles and bubbles.
Girl bath.
Like even his bubbles back behind him, they've got like a rose and stuff on them. I mean, this is the kind of bath I would take.
Yeah, this is where we get to see the group of nihilists for the first time. Is that right? Is this the first time we see them? I think it is, and one of them is played by Flea, who is the bass player for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Did you know
really?
that? Yeah,
I did not.
He's done some acting.
Why does he have a pet ferret?
I don't know why they have a ferret, and I don't know why the dude calls it a marmot.
Oh, God, and he's throwing it in the bath. No! If you have ever had a cat fall into your bath, then you can relate to this scene really well right here. Because I've had a cat fall into my bath many a time.
This is about as goofy as this movie gets, I think. This scene right here is as wacky as this movie gets.
That poor ferret.
With the ferret being dropped into the bathtub. That's Flea on the left of Peter Stormare here. The one with the space in his teeth. With his mouth hanging open.
And they're using the word Johnson, like after she just used the word Johnson.
Yeah, she and they're kind of, I think that they're even proving
Stomp
a point.
on it and squish it.
I think they're even proving a point, because she says that most men will refer to their dick or their rod or their Johnson without batting an eye. And he, not only does he call the dude's penis a Johnson, he says, "We'll cut off your Johnson," but he repeats himself without batting an eye. And he's right into the camera. He says, "We'll cut off your Johnson," and they put an echo effect on it and everything. It's they're making a point of it, which is, interesting, if ultimately meaningless, I guess. And now dude has recovered his car.
So I always, before I did research on this film, I always thought them calling I guess they're the antagonists. If he's the protagonist, then the nihilists are the antagonists.
But are they...
That's an easy antagonist to pick.
I guess, in as much as they are the source of the conflict. They are what brings dude into the main conflict of the film.
Right, and forces him to make choices that he otherwise wouldn't make. And anyway, so before I did research on this film, I would have said that them being called nihilists was just like a comedy thing, that it was just like a, where it's funny to say nihilist and call people nihilists.
It ties directly into what you were talking about existentialism.
Right.
Which is
so let's
kind
get
of a
into
running
that
theme in the movie.
a little bit.
Go ahead and get into it.
So later in the movie, at about, it'll be around an hour and 30 minutes into the movie, after he has sex with
Look at that can of
Maud.
Orange Slice that Donnie's drinking.
That is a can of Orange Slice. Was this something that you drank in the 90s?
I've had, yes, I did. I drank Slice.
Orange Slice, but we didn't drink a lot of soda in my house as a kid.
I don't think Slice exists anymore.
I was deprived.
That's why I'm pointing it out. But go ahead, continue with your snooty pooty bullshit about existentialism.
So after he has sex with Maud, there is a book on the table beside his bed, and all the book says that I can read, and maybe if you have a better screen to look at and you can zoom in or something, you could see more, but all it says is Sartre. Sartre.
If you want to pronounce it that way. I don't speak French, so Sartre. Sartre's fine.
So
please continue.
Which clearly has to refer to Jean-Paul Sartre.
Yes.
Okay, so
philosopher and playwright.
He's a 1900s French philosopher, and I learned about him as a playwright because I had to study No Exit when
we actually brought we brought
talked
that up
about that in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, when we did our commentary of Beetlejuice, go back and check that out.
No Exit is the play where the three people are dead and they're trapped in a room together, and it spawns that really famous line called "Hell is other hell is other people."
Mm-hmm.
But people misuse the line because they think that it literally means that hell is other people, but actually it ties into Sartre's phenomenological ontology philosophy, which has to do with hell is other people actually means that seeing yourself as an object through other people's consciousness is hell, is what he actually means in that play.
Sure.
Anyways, so he's got that book on his table, and this guy was a key figure in existentialism. And then we can go from there, and we can look at existentialism. What is existentialism? The existentialist attitude starts with a sense of confusion when faced with the absurd meaninglessness of the world in which we live.
Right.
So
that there's no point to it all.
There's no point.
Right.
So it sounds like, okay, the Coen brothers could have just put the book on the table as whatever, but I don't think they're the kind of directors that would have a book sitting there in such prominent view in a shot and it's a long scene, long enough that you're sitting there and you can read the title on the book, and that all it would say is this philosopher's name, and that this philosopher is a key figure in existentialism, and that his character has so many existentialist qualities, and that we have nihilists in the film. Obviously, it's a point that's being made.
Well, it
has to be.
I mean, if you look at the Coen brothers' body of work in and of itself, I think that they stumbled upon the concept of nihilism and existentialism probably when they made Fargo, I guess. Because before that, they made a bunch of films that seemed to have a moral center to them, that had the heroes had purpose. They made movies like Blood Simple, which is kind of it's a great film, but it's a standard like noir detective type movie that resolves itself in kind of an expectant way. And then they've got comedies like Raising Arizona, which are more or less lighthearted and I haven't seen either of these movies. Have a heart to them and things like that. And then they've got movies like The Hudsucker Proxy and whatnot.
Not seen it.
But since Fargo, they have made movies that, like The Big Lebowski, that not only directly reference nihilism and have a running theme of existentialism through them, but many of their movies outright say that there is no point to anything that happens.
Now, but we have to be careful because there is a distinction between existentialism and nihilism, which is my point about this movie, which is why but
nihilism plays into existentialism.
But we have to be careful because I really think that Jeff Bridges' character, the dude, is an existentialist.
Right.
And the nihilists are the nihilists. His antagonists are the nihilists, because nihilism is kind of like that dark place of existentialism that you don't want to go to. Nihilism is often confused with existentialism, which one of the main reasons for this is because Friedrich Nietzsche was a philosopher in both areas. Mm-hmm. So people, they think Nietzsche and then they mix up existentialism and nihilism and think they're the same thing, and they're not. But because also in existentialism and nihilism, we talk about the world being meaningless. The difference is, though, that in existentialism, people are encouraged to persist through the absurd, find meaning, and basically just deal with it.
Yeah.
And each individual person, not religion, not society, but each individual person is responsible for finding meaning in life and in the world.
Right.
And that's the dude. That's him. He's this guy who he's in this crazy place. He doesn't know what day it is. He doesn't know
he's unemployed.
He's unemployed. He's just floating through life.
He's kind of on the outskirts of society. Like he's people call him a deadbeat multiple times throughout the movie.
And also, we're talking about a movie where the directors themselves said that it's a hopeless plot that's ultimately unimportant.
Yeah.
This is a
which
hopeless,
feels like all of their movies since
world.
then.
this is a world without meaning. All these confusing, complex things are happening that the dude keeps talking. He even says, he's like, there are all these ins and outs, and I can't keep all the strands in my head. It's a confusing world, and it's a meaningless, absurd place. But he's the kind of person who's okay with it, though. Mm-hmm. He finds meaning in it through his friends. He finds meaning in it through his bowling, through his White Russians. He
does things. Like, he doesn't do what we see Uli doing when we first are introduced to him as a character, just laying in a pool. Just doing nothing, laying in a
just
pool
literally
drinking.
Nothing. The nihilist is laying there, literally doing, because the world is pointless, and so fuck it, right? And that's what the nihilists are in this movie. Is they're people who, it's like nihilism is giving up. Mm-hmm. Existentialism is accepting that the world is a messed up place, and then still dealing with it. It's
persevering despite the pointlessness,
right?
And nihilism is giving up because of the pointlessness,
exactly. Right? And so that's why I really think that this movie is this amazing thing where it's this noir film that we've seen again and again, but it's done in such a unique way that we can't even tell it's a noir film without tearing it to pieces.
Right.
But it has this existentialist twist where everything is kind of absurd and where things don't have a point in the end. We don't get a resolution to it, you know? To the mystery doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there's the briefcase doesn't matter. Her being kidnapped doesn't matter. The rug doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you know, you've got movies like Burn After Reading, which came, I guess, about 10 years after this movie, another Coen Brothers movie, where there's a scene at the very, very end of the film where two characters talk to each other and they say outright, so what did we learn from all of this? And the answer is nothing. We didn't learn anything. We learned not to do this again. We learned not to go down this path again because there was nothing but absurdity and pointlessness to this. And then you look at another movie of the Coen Brothers, which is, you know, atmospherically totally different, a movie like No Country for Old Men, which wears its pointlessness of violence and revenge on its sleeve, so much so that they don't even give you the climax of the film, that they deny you, much like the book that it's based off of, written by Cormac McCarthy. They deny you the climax of the film to show the audience that none of this is important. None of this matters. The violence and the struggle that people go through for money or whatever their, you know, meager short-term goals are. None of that stuff matters. It is kind of a nihilistic film, and, you know, at the end of the movie we get Tommy Lee Jones giving his monologue about this dream he's having about his father going off into the darkness, going off ahead of him with a torch on a horse into the darkness, and that basically saying that the only thing that you live for is those short-term goals. Just go a little bit farther ahead, because the darkness surrounding you, there's no way to overcome it. It's pointless to try.
It's really depressing.
It is super depressing. What happened to the Coen Brothers?
One other thing to back up my point, that this is a existentialist film, or to make another point for the existentialism that I see in this film, is so much reference to the Vietnam War. It's a war that is so often referred to as a pointless war. I mean, so much controversy is surrounding it because of that fact. So obviously that's another tie-in for. We're here at the Landlord's Dance. Is that what this is?
We are at the Landlord's Dance.
I read something online about this being a reference to some, like, the wreaths that are around him. Someone tried to do this thing where they took apart the characters and paired them with the tarot cards that they're supposed to represent. It was interesting, but as with all things that get quite that specific, I think it stretched a little bit.
The man sitting behind them is a director, and I can't remember who it is. This is a cameo by a somewhat famous director, and I wish I could remember who it is, but I can't.
Who's your favorite character in this movie? Is it the dude?
Yeah.
I really love Donnie.
Really?
I feel so bad for him.
He's not really a character, though.
No, he is, though.
I mean, he is, but he doesn't have an arc. Does he have an arc?
Does he have an arc? Well, he doesn't change, so...
He doesn't change. I think all of the characters in this movie kind of... maybe they don't change, but the world around them certainly does, which is one of the two requirements. And they have to
change the way they react to it?
Sure.
Well, then I guess Donnie does. Then he changes the way he reacts to it when he dies. So
wow. Yeah, I guess
it gets
so.
too crazy,
Yeah,
and then he can't deal.
It's driving me crazy that I can't think of who the director is, because I know that this is a director
who's sitting behind them in
yes.
the theater.
It's a famous director that I like.
And Walter is referencing the In-N-Out, which is a burger place.
That's a real burger joint.
Right. He apparently did advertisements for that place at some point.
Really?
Yeah. I guess before this or after. I don't know if it was after or before,
I have no
but
idea.
he did advertisements for that place, which is, I'm thinking it was before, and so that's why they reference it here.
Interesting. This this scene right here gets really, really funny and leads to one of maybe the greatest TV edits of curse words of all time. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
With one of the what? Sorry, I was listening to them and not you.
Actually, I meant to mention this back when we did Dumb and Dumber, but one of my favorite TV edits of curse words of all time.
Oh, I've heard this one.
One of my favorites is in Dumb and Dumber, and it's toward the end of the movie when Harry and Lloyd and Mary are tied up to the bed, and they're being held not hostage, but they're being held by the bad guy. I think his name is Nick Andres or something like that. And Harry and Lloyd are arguing, and Lloyd says something along the lines of, "You can sign right on my ass after you kiss it," like something like that.
Yeah.
And the TV edit is, "You can sign on my sandwich right after you kiss it." It doesn't make that much sense, and that's kind of why I love it so much. I think another one that people would really probably be familiar with, if you're familiar with TV edits at all, is in Die Hard, where the line "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker" is replaced with "Yippee-ki-yay, melon farmer."
Melon farmer?
Also, there's an alternate "Yippee-ki-yay, melon no, not melon farmer, Mr. Falcon. Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon."
Okay.
But we're about to get maybe
one of the best,
greatest TV edits of all time. In this scene, Walter.
Look at this homework. This poor kid. There is red pen all over that paper. And what grade did he get? I can't see.
He got a D.
Well, at least he didn't fail.
Yes. Well, he didn't, but the dude says that he's flunking social studies later. When he outs this kid, this Larry Sellers kid, to Jackie Treehorn, the porn star loan shark guy, and he says, "The kid you want is named Larry Sellers. He lives down on this road, and I'm sure your goons can get the money out of him. He's a 15-year-old kid, flunking social studies," is how he puts it. But the crazy thing is that if you look back on all of these events, once you realize what's actually happening in the movie,
Walter just said it. He said, "This is pointless."
Yeah. He said, "This is pointless.
This is pointless.
All of this is pointless." Larry's not saying anything, but he didn't do anything. I mean, he was in the car. Maybe he took the car at some point or another and left his line. Oh, he's going to continue saying it. But the thing that I was saying is that Larry maybe took the car and left his homework in there, and maybe took the briefcase, but the briefcase that he took was also a ringer. Like they say later when they figure out the plot, they traded a ringer for a ringer. There was never any money in the briefcase.
That's right.
So the line that Walter's saying right now is, "You see what happens, Larry? You see what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass?" and the TV edit is, "Do you see what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps?"
Find a stranger in the Alps.
It's funny because it doesn't make sense. Do you see what happens, Larry, when you find a stranger in the Alps? That's wonderful.
I guess so. They destroy your car that.
And this is, again, like, we'll come back to this. The real owner of the car comes out. The owner of the Camaro comes out, and he's so upset. And because
it's not the kid.
It's not the kid. And because of Walter's actions, dude's car is once again the subject of intense abuse.
And I guess this is where they really destroy the car. Do they destroy it worse than this later in the movie, or is that
that's about as bad as it gets? But dude has one more car wreck, but it's a very minor car wreck. But all of the major
Look
damage.
at Walter, he's just eating.
Yeah, they got in and out. He promised Donnie in and out, so they got in and out. There's a sweetness to Walter and Donnie's relationship that really comes out later in the movie when they face off against the nihilists.
Yeah.
But the fact that only Walter and Donnie are eating their In-N-Out burgers and dude's just stewing in his car that's been nice, freshly ventilated. But
why are they
the
friends?
damages,
Why are the dude and Walter friends? I mean, they bowl together, but I mean, really think about it.
Is there an origin story here
well,
that needs to be explored?
If he is the personification of like the hippies in the '60s and what they're doing now in the '90s, like, then why is he hanging out with a Vietnam vet? Aren't they enemies?
I imagine they met at the bowling alley. I would just assume that they met at the bowling alley.
Their personalities, they're like, 20 years ago, 30 years
opposites.
ago.
But they're in the same. But they're both baby boomers. They're both part of the same.
So it doesn't
generation.
matter now because time has passed. It's all pointless. It's meaningless. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
That moment right there where he takes all the time to put the 2x4 in front of the door and puts the chair.
It opens
and
outside.
Opens the opposite way. This is a funny shot here. The two thugs,
because
they are wearing each other's clothes from the first scene that they were in together.
That's beautiful.
They're.
And
then, we have boobs.
Is it our second dream sequence?
This isn't a dream sequence, but it is our second boobs on Popcorn Poops.
We already saw boobs with Maude, though.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot.
We didn't mention it. Is this supposed to be an important thing that we talk about?
Not
boobs?
really. I mean, only if you're 12. My 12-year-old movie loving self was
really,
very fond of movie boobs.
I know your most important boob moment in movies.
Oh, are we going to have to do that movie?
What, I don't remember which one it is. Night of the Living Dead.
No, it's Return of the Living Dead.
Okay, sure.
Linnea Quigley, my first love. my first
love?
My first lust.
Love?
And this is the I mentioned before, the porn director, porn producer, loan shark, Jackie Treehorn.
The first boobs that I distinctly remember in a movie was...
Don't say Titanic.
Titanic.
Oh my God! Why did you say Titanic?
Because
why did I know you were going to say Titanic?
I was in fourth grade. I can't remember anything before that was, from a movie that I specifically saw. But I remember that because it was a big deal. Because I was going to the movie theater to see it, and my parents said it was okay, and I knew there were going to be boobs. I knew it. I knew it before I saw it.
I knew there were going to be boobs.
Did you see it in the theaters?
Yes, I did. Twice. Twice?
I
think I saw it twice in theaters.
You weren't even in love with Leonardo DiCaprio, so why
I wasn't, but
did you go see it twice?
Everyone was going to see that movie multiple times. Like in my lifetime, there have been a couple of movies that I knew people like in my age group that continued to go see movies over and over again during their theatrical runs, and I knew girls.
You were older too. How old were you? Well, I guess you were only a year older,
yeah,
so you were in fifth grade.
I was like in fifth grade.
I was in fourth grade. I remember distinctly.
And I remember I knew girls that were in my class that went to see that movie 5 or 6 times while I was in the theater.
I think I only saw it once, but
I'm pretty sure I saw it twice.
The older girls I knew,
the one movie that I've seen the most during its theatrical run, the original theatrical run.
Which Lord of the Rings was it?
Oh my God! I wish it was a Lord of the Rings movie.
What?
I wish I could be proud
not?
of that. No,
what?
It's not.
Are you serious? Mine is definitely either maybe Two Towers. I think I saw Two Towers like 7 times in theaters.
I'm so ashamed of this.
I don't know if I want to know.
ashamed
It's
of
going
this.
to destroy my perception of you for all time.
I'm going to say the first word first, and then I'm going to say the next word, and then you'll know.
What?
Batman.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
Forever.
How many times did you see it?
I saw Batman Forever at least 4 times in the theaters. But it was all happenstance. It just happened that way. Like the first time I went, I was with my mom,
wrong with you?
And my mom took me to see it, and then
How old were you? You had to be little.
What was Batman Forever? Batman Forever was like 96 or something, so I was about 9 or 10, something like that.
Oh, so you weren't in charge of going to see it then?
No, but what?
No, I was in charge of going to see Two Towers.
No,
like
but
7 times.
basically what happened was that I went with my mother. we just went by ourselves, and then my brother wanted to see it, so I went with my mother and my
There's a picture
brother.
of a penis that he just found.
And then I went with my mother and my brother and my father, and that was the third time. And then I think I went with a friend, like the next time, because they
really
wanted to go see
sorry.
it. I am too. That's a terrible,
sad for you.
terrible movie.
And now as an adult, like if you tried to see a movie even twice in theaters, I'd be like, "Excuse me, no, you're not. You're not going again."
Especially in Japan, at $18
Yeah,
a ticket,
true.
that's pretty steep.
I'm like, just go buy the Blu-ray,
Non 3D.
please. No, you're not going again.
You're totally off the topic here.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Oh well.
So we're about to get the second dream sequence in the movie, which is for I don't know. Do you think that the dude is drugged? I don't think that this is probably the case, but do you think that the dude is drugged and forced into a porno by Jackie Treehorn?
I never got that impression before. I just always assumed that it was just a mixture of.
I think it's just a dream sequence, but like I don't know if that it implies that Jackie Treehorn took advantage of the dude and got his money out of the dude by drugging him and forcing him into a pornographic film, taking it, like exploiting him.
I never thought of that before.
It's
That's messed up.
It's a little dark, right?
Yeah. Which I'm not saying this movie wouldn't go there because
We get a nice little reverse shot here when the dude's face hits the table. Shot in reverse. And then reversed.
Oh, he spilled his White Russian. That's so sad.
Does that count as one of the 9?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does. That's so sad. I feel bad for him.
But almost once this dream sequence starts, nearly all of the visible symbols in this dream sequence are taken from earlier scenes. So there's the black and white tile, which is seen earlier in The Big Lebowski's entryway when the dude walks with Brandt, and again at the end. There's also the tool belt, and the workman outfit the dude is seen wearing is identical to the one worn by Carl Hungus in the porno movie Logjammin' that Maude shows him earlier in the movie. Saddam Hussein is mentioned briefly by Walter in the car outside the bowling alley, and we see Saddam Hussein as the man working behind the counter.
These are all the
bowling alley.
references that
All
that
of the
this movie-
references that we're going to see, in this dream sequence here. In the opening credits, we saw a man that looks a bit similar to Saddam spraying the bowling alley shoes at the alley, and that was at the beginning of the movie. Maude's golden ball bra cups are taken from bowling balls seen on the rack behind Walter in an earlier scene at the bowling alley. So a lot of this stuff is just background stuff.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are the scissors that the nihilists are using. They've got these red bodysuits on. At the end of the dream sequence, the nihilists are using these big scissors, which were in the painting that I pointed out earlier on Maude's wall in her studio. And the red on black bowling ball is the same as the one in the earlier dream sequence, and it's also visible on the rack behind Walter and the dude at the bowling alley. And then the initial scene of the dude's exaggerated walking when he walked into this with the Kenny Rogers song that started playing, cast a really big shadow on the wall, and it's really similar to his landlord's shadow dance in his dance quintet.
Oh,
that he
okay,
did.
yeah, because that whole half of it was like behind the curtains.
And then even Maude Lebowski's trident that she was holding is similar to a trident that's in a statue that a statue is holding in
everything,
in
literally
the Big Lebowski's
everything.
home.
And again, he's here helping her bowl, but he's not bowling.
Right. Even in the
Why
dream
doesn't
sequence.
he bowl?
Even in the
Why
dream
doesn't he
sequence,
bowl
he's
in
not
this movie?
bowling. Do you think that was an intentional thing? Do you think it means something that he's identifiable as a bowler, but he doesn't bowl?
Probably.
What does that mean? I don't know that I can say for sure what it means. I could bullshit something.
Yeah, it would be bullshit if I came up with something right now.
It totally is in reference to the existential quandary that is.
I read that in this scene where he's floating through their legs,
Yeah.
like he's the bowling ball, that he was actually too big to fit through their legs.
Of course he
so
was.
they had to like digitally make him smaller.
That's pretty funny.
Do you know how many times they say dude in this movie? Have I told you that yet?
No, how many times?
160 times.
My goodness.
161 if you conclude the text that was just here on the credits for this gutterball porno sequence.
Does that count?
Well, they didn't say it.
What about the end credits of the movie where he's credited as the dude?
I don't think that was counted.
All right.
Then it would be 162.
All right.
Nihilist holding giant scissors and trying to cut the existentialist? That means something, right? Sure.
I don't know. I think that I don't think this movie has a very good relationship with nihilism in and of itself. I think that even the Coen brothers' later films are even more nihilistic than this movie. I think this movie is, like you said, there is the difference between nihilism and existentialism. I think this movie is much more existentialist than it is nihilistic. However, I think their more recent movies are a lot more nihilistic. Because I think that the nihilists are painted as fools in this movie. And they're painted as, even though that they're not supposed to believe in anything, although they're not supposed to have any kind of ethos, I guess.
But our main characters in the Coen brothers movies persevere. Like, okay, in No Country, right? Our antagonist is a nihilist. We can say that, right?
In No Country?
In No Country for Old Men.
No, I don't think so. I think he has morals. I think he certainly has a foundation. He's kind of a good old boy. He's kind of a
our antagonist?
Oh, I thought you said protagonist.
No, our antagonist.
Our antagonist? No, because he has
rules that he goes by, but
I don't know that he does have rules. He has, I think if anything, he's an anarchist, because he lives his, I mean, the only kind of order that he seems to have in his life is the coin that he tosses, that,
but that's meaningless.
It's meaningless, but there's an element of order to his chaos. I don't know. I think that's closer to anarchy than it is to nihilism. I think he believes in something. He seems to believe in something.
But I don't understand why you feel like their films are nihilist instead of existentialist.
I'm not talking about the characters themselves. I'm talking about the world in which these characters inhabit. So in the world of No Country for Old Men, all of these terrible things happen to a character that doesn't really have these things coming to him, that only really wants to protect his family. And in the end, the main character dies and the bad guy gets away. Just because that's the world we live in, I mean, I think it's a tough message, but I think that in this movie, the nihilists that don't believe in anything, that think that the world is all meaningless chaos, they're painted as fools who actually do believe in something, like as though nihilism is fashionable, as though it's something that they put on.
It's a joke. It's something funny to say. They're the nihilists.
Walter even pokes fun at them at the end when they say, when they're asking the dude for their money, when the dude keeps saying there was never any money. The Big Lebowski never gave anybody any money. There was nothing. They threw out a ringer for a ringer. Once they figure it out, they know that no money was ever involved. Bunny ran off. The nihilist knew that she ran off to wherever she went, and they took that time that she was missing, and here she is. Here she is driving back, and we see Bunny Lebowski in the car. We're about to see a shot of her toes that are totally intact. She didn't lose any toes. She just went to see some friends in I can't remember where they say.
I don't know.
She's singing "Viva Las Vegas," so I thought that she would have gone off to.
Here we see all her
Las
toes.
Vegas, but we see all of her toes.
Her.
So none
I
of
don't
this
think
stuff,
they showed it. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't looking, but did they show her license plate in that shot?
No, but later they do.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what you're.
Then I'll leave it alone.
Okay. But yeah, that I just say that to say that I think that this movie is much more existentialist. I think this movie does believe in something, and I think that you can prove that simply by the fact that the nihilists are painted as kind of big babies. Big babies that do actually believe in something. Walter even pokes fun at them for it when they say, it's not fair that we didn't get the money. It's not fair. Walter's like, not fair? You're nihilists. What do you mean it's not fair?
Why are you surprised?
So the dude has come back to his apartment and in a wonderful callback to earlier, trips over the board that he nailed into the ground himself to keep out Jackie Treehorn's thugs very, ineffectually. and he finds his apartment completely ransacked for the money, I guess. He was drugged by Jackie Treehorn so that the thugs could come back to his apartment, totally ransack it while he was knocked out, and try to find the money, of which there is none. And Maud is there, and she seduces him, and now they're having pillow talk while he smokes a joint. Which is, he actually makes mention to him being part of a...
He said that he helped write the Port Huron Statement.
Yes.
Which, do you know what that is?
Yes.
Go ahead and tell me, because I don't, actually. I was just looking it up.
The Port Huron Statement is, as I understand it, it was a document that was written by the Students for a Democratic Society at a national convention meeting in Michigan in 1962. And one of the characters that the dude was based on, Jeff Dowd, was actually one of the original authors of that. So it just kind of shows that the dude was somewhat of an activist in his younger years, a political activist. He even, like I said before, he refers to himself as a pacifist and groups himself with conscientious objectors of the Vietnam War.
There's the book on the table. I don't know if we got the shot of it yet or not, where you can see the title.
But yeah, I think he also refers to himself as a member of the Seattle Seven, of which Jeff Dowd, the dude.
There it is. There's the book.
One of the people that the dude was based on. Oh yeah, there it is, right there. And the Seattle Seven was also called the Seattle Liberation Front, and they were a radical anti-Vietnam movement, group of political activists.
An anti-Vietnam movement?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which the dude also aligns himself in this movie, which also plays into kind of the duality or the contrast in the dude's relationship to Walter.
Right, of course. That's what I was talking about, is that it's like I'm interested in what that's saying, or what that stemmed from, because you've got two characters who shouldn't be friends, but they're best friends.
But the Seattle Seven was actually founded by a political activist and rabbi by the name of Michael Lerner, who should not be confused with Academy Award nominated Michael Lerner, who appeared in the Coen brothers' 1991 film Barton Fink, and also in their 2010 film A Serious Man.
I like that movie.
That is also kind of a nihilistic movie.
Yes, it is.
It is basically the story of Job from the Bible.
But really nihilistic or existentialist?
I don't know. The movie ends with all of the terrible shit that happens to him throughout that movie, and any brief glimmer of hope at the end of the movie is completely eliminated when he turns around and sees that there's a tornado coming right for him. I mean, it's really, really about the...
But it's still what I'm saying, though, is it's still people persevering. It's still people persevering and trying to fight through the absurdity. Right?
Sure.
Right? If you have all characters who have given up, and they've given up on this absurd world.
Well, what we're talking about right now is exactly why people confuse existentialism for nihilism.
Right, yeah, it is. But, I mean, there's a distinct difference.
Yeah, there definitely is. I love this exchange here so right now, the sun is down, but it is now the Sabbath. It is Shabbos for Walter. So the dude calls Walter. Walter picks up the phone, and Walter gets a little upset, and he says, I'm not even supposed to answer the phone unless it's an emergency. And dude says, this is an emergency. And Walter says, yes, that's why I picked up the phone, as though he knew. This little exchange right here is kind of fun. The dude finds a private detective in a blue Volkswagen Bug, who he's noticed earlier in the movie. He noticed following him earlier in the movie. And the private detective's name is DeFino, and he's working, as he explains here, he's working for the Knutsons, pronounced the Knutsons, and they're looking for their daughter, Fawn Knutson, who turns out to be Bunny. It's Bunny LEBOWSKI, who has run away from home, run away from her from her home in wherever he says they're from.
Some
farm somewhere.
So you know that he just called the dude, he said, "I'm a brother Seamus."
Yes.
Okay, so you know what that refers to, right?
Yes, the dude obviously doesn't know what a brother Seamus is.
Right.
But
he's confused in this absurd world and he doesn't know the role that he's playing.
Right. So it was a term for a dick, a private investigator, in those novels written by Raymond Chandler in like the noir, the big noir years. And that, it just refers to
right. He gets mistaken by a detective. He gets mistaken by a detective for a detective.
Right. This guy, DeFino, thinks that the dude is another private eye.
Right, because this plays into the other half of the theory that I had about this, where I feel like it's an existentialist twist on like old noir films. And
well, you could argue that old noir films are existential in their own right. I mean, there are many academic papers about that very thing.
Okay, I don't know noir that well, so I
honestly
couldn't argue
I don't know it that well
personally,
either. I should, but I don't.
But anyways, though, so I found this article by this girl, Rebecca Coates.
This is the scene we mentioned it before, but this is the scene that is sort of a cheat. It's the one scene in the movie that doesn't explicitly have the dude
the pancake, getting the pancakes.
And I've looked at this scene before because they say that
this is Amy Mann.
Yeah, she's a musician.
Mm-hmm. From the 90s.
But they say that the van, Walter's van, is driving outside or is parked outside this thing, and you can see it through the window. And I've looked at the scene multiple times, and I can't see the van. I don't know if it's just...
Amy Mann was the one who lost her toe for the cause.
Well, hats off to Amy Mann. What were you saying?
Anyway, so I found this article by a girl named Rebecca Coates from 2010, and she did all the work for me, and she broke the characters down to show the parallel with the Big Sleep and other noir movies. And she doesn't talk about existentialism, but she does talk about absurdism and postmodernism.
Yeah.
And she breaks the characters down, and just like for a few of them, to show the parallels, like the dude is called Brother Seamus, which is the slang for a detective, like the main character Philip Marlowe, played by Humphrey Bogart in The Big Sleep. And that's what Philip Marlowe calls himself, is a Seamus. Mm-hmm. But because we're in this absurd world, the dude doesn't know the role he's playing, so he confuses it for an Irish monk.
Right.
Mr. Lebowski is in a wheelchair, just like the client, whose name is Sternwood, from The Big Sleep. He's also in a wheelchair, and he's also rich. But unlike Sternwood, Mr. Lebowski is kind of pathetic when he's without his wheelchair or his money. You kind of look at him, and he's a pathetic
I'm going to have
person.
to be honest. I haven't seen The Big Sleep.
Oh, I haven't either. I'm
okay.
like I said, this girl did all the research for me. So
Okay. That's on my list of shame. I know that's one of the things I've got to see.
I'm not shamed by it, but Sternwood is apparently an intimidating character. So again, that's our twist on it, is that Mr. Lebowski is just this pathetic guy behind the facade of his money that doesn't exist. And then, like, for just one more reference, Bunny, who's in pornos
Speaking
and offers...
of Bunny, here's your license plate.
Ah, yes, the license plate. Go ahead and pronounce it, because I can't.
Lapin.
There you go. Good job. Which means rabbit in French.
Or bunny.
Yeah,
right.
Bunny.
Bunny. With I just saw boobs.
Did
outside
you?
the
Again?
window. Yeah.
There were more boobs?
Yeah, Bunny just hopped by like a...
Hopped by?
Like a bunny.
Like a bunny?
Totally naked. 3 boobs in this movie.
I'm a fucking veteran. So Bunny, who's in pornos and offers blowjobs, is like the wayward daughter of Sternwood in The Big Sleep, whose name is Carmen. Mm-hmm. And she makes Marlowe uncomfortable with her sexual advances, and he doesn't want to put up with her feminine ways because he's suspicious of her sexuality. But the dude is totally not affected by it. Like she offers a blowjob, and he's just like, okay. Like, he doesn't even respond to it. So Anyways, those are just some examples. Her article is much much better than what I just spewed out here, but she really breaks it down well and just shows how all the characters are paralleled. It was really to a T exactly what I think is going on in this movie. Is these archetype characters that are
in homage to one of the great Noir stories.
Right, yeah. And then kind of twisted with the Coen brothers' dark
sense of humor.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So let's not that I advocate plot hole film criticism, but there's one big plot hole in this movie that I don't hear people talking about.
Is there?
And I don't. I mean, it may very well be intentional. It may very well be the main plot hole out of The Big Sleep. I have no idea. Could be. I'm not sure. But the plot of the movie is basically that Jeffrey Lebowski, the dude, gets mistaken for this Big Lebowski character who has a lot of money. And he's dragged into this whole issue when the Big Lebowski's wife, Bunny, is owed money all over town from this Jackie Treehorn, pornographer character. And here we see the shot of Donnie not getting his strike.
He's not going to get a strike.
He's not going to get a strike, which...
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, Donnie.
Yep. And that foreshadows his
whole
death.
Fucking thing is nothing about nothing, says Walter.
But anyway, just to blow through the plot real quick.
Nothing.
Bunny disappears. They think that she has been kidnapped. The dude has tapped out to be the courier for the money, and basically the dude realizes that the Big Lebowski doesn't want Bunny to come back, and that he has given the so-called kidnappers, who were the nihilists, who just took advantage of the fact that Bunny was away to get some money out of the Big Lebowski. They didn't have her at all the whole time. And he takes advantage of this to take $1 million out of the Big Lebowski Urban Achievers Foundation, the
right.
fund there, and embezzle that money out of it and give it to the dude to give to the nihilists or the kidnappers, but he doesn't actually give it to her. But in any case, like, his whole big plan is that he takes the money out and doesn't actually give it because he doesn't want her to come back anyway, and he just wants the money because he's sick of her. He's sick of dealing with his young hot wife that is a floozy, I guess you could say. But the problem is that even if he takes that money out of the charity fund, it would still be embezzlement whether or not he used it to pay the ransom or keep it for himself.
Yeah.
Simply misappropriating funds that are meant for one cause, that is the definition of embezzlement. And if they can lead it back to him, which they still could, then he would be the one in trouble. The dude never had any money in the first place. The Big Lebowski still has the money. If that was his big plan all along, it's a really dumb plan because he can still be charged with embezzlement. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a plot hole or if that's meant to highlight how
the question
stupid
is
the Big Lebowski
where is the money? Where is it?
The Big Lebowski has it.
I guess he has
he
it.
He definitely has it.
But he's gonna lose it anyways.
Well, he's gonna spend it because he doesn't have any of his own money. Maud Lebowski
he's gonna lose it because they're gonna find him. They're gonna find him out, and he's gonna be put in jail for embezzlement anyway.
And we don't see the end of that. We don't see where that ends up. We don't see if he gets charged with it.
Here are our nihilists, our German nihilists. And they lit his car on fire. It's now on fire.
That's it. They did it. They killed my fucking car. I love that delivery there. That's what ransom is. Those are the fucking rules. This exchange right here is so great. Who are the nihilists,
you bunch of crybabies?
Oh, it's so great.
He calls the nihilists crybabies.
Is this the climax of the film?
Is this the climax?
Because we've got the protagonists versus the antagonists in...
Yeah, I guess so.
In the peak of the conflict, which leads into the absurdity of the film, the conflict has actually already been resolved. There
actually was no conflict.
There was no conflict. They went and they confronted the Big Lebowski, and he said, "It's your word against mine. I don't have the money. You don't have the money. Who has the money?" When he does in fact have the money.
I've got $4, almost $5.
But yeah, I think it's it leads into it feeds right into the absurdism of this film. Yes, they do. How absurd.
And Walter just doesn't care.
It's wonderful. This is
and he throws the bowling ball just like in a...
This is a great pointless climax that has no bearing on anything, yet...
see, there's the sign, Ben-Hur.
Yet there is a character death.
Yes.
This climax really has nothing to do with anything. It's really pointless.
And one of the characters
but we lose
dies
a character
pointlessly.
In it. Yeah. That's so anti-Semite.
See, Ben-Hur, auto repair. That's what it says.
Wow. Well,
see, so it's
Walter
it's drawing an allusion to him
absolutely.
and a
Walter
Jewish hero.
is kind of the hero of this scene.
Yeah, he is, absolutely. And then there's
poor
Donnie. Poor Donnie. It's the reason it's so depressing is that it's so depressing because it's so real, and it's just everything else in this movie is fantasy, you know?
Like everything is heightened.
Like like regular people don't get involved in plots where people are kidnapped.
The dude even says himself,
have their toes cut off, but regular people have heart attacks outside bowling alleys.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the things that the dude says that kind of points to how pointless all this is before, when he was talking to Jackie Treehorn, he said all the dude ever wanted was his rug back. And then you realize that that's what started all of this craziness in the first place, and that's all the dude ever really wanted. The dude just wanted his rug back.
His rug that got peed on.
It really tied the room together.
It really did. Apparently that line was something that do you know who they based this character on? I didn't write it down.
The dude?
The dude.
A couple of characters. They based him primarily on a man by the name of Jeff Dowd that I talked about, who was part of the Seattle Seven, who wrote the Port Huron Statement, or was one of the original authors on the Port Huron Statement.
Somebody that they knew, though. Did they know that guy?
Yeah, actually, there was... let's see.
There was somebody that they knew because that line specifically was from...
there was a man by the name of Peter Exlin who was someone that the Coen brothers actually knew. And he coined the phrase that really tied the room together to describe one of his own rugs. So this guy, Pete, and one of his friends, the Big Lou, quote-unquote, Big Lou Abernathy, a private detective who the Coens didn't know, are considered to be partial basis for the character of Walter. Pete was I guess this is what Walter is based on. Visually, I think Walter is based on, and maybe in philosophy too, Walter is kind of based on John Milius, the director, but also partially on this Pete Exlin guy. So Pete was a Vietnam veteran and a college professor who once jokingly tried to scare his students by exclaiming, "First Vietnam, now this," while hitting a chair, similar to the way Walter, who does it very earnestly, inappropriately compares everything to Vietnam. Pete also told the Coens about a story where his car was stolen and Abernathy helped him investigate it. And they found the homework of a 14-year-old, and instead of telling the police, they put the homework in a plastic bag and drove out to the kid's home to confront him, though unlike the movie, the kid did not actually steal the car, and Abernathy did not end the confrontation by bashing a car outside the kid's house. And then another story that Pete told the Coens was the time that Abernathy was arraigned by a Santa Monica sheriff who, as in this movie, insulted him and told him to, quote, "stay out of my beach community." So, but the dude's primary influence was this guy that I talked about, Jeff Dowd.
Okay.
Who actually shows up to a lot of those LEBOWSKI fests that happen. But yeah. Interesting little influences all over this movie.
What do you think of this little speech that he's giving here at the end?
Well, he ends it with a quote from Hamlet, from Act 5 of William Shakespeare's Hamlet.
He turns it into a Vietnam thing.
Yes, he turns it into a Vietnam thing.
And the dude is clearly getting frustrated.
As he always does. And then he quotes Act 5 of Shakespeare's Hamlet when he says, "Good night, sweet prince." Which has now become a meme.
They've got him in a Folgers tin. Oh, I have something about this.
All right, go ahead.
Hold on, I have to find it, so say what you were going to say.
Oh, it just that that now "Good night, sweet prince" is a meme that people use whenever a celebrity dies or something. It's common to say "Good night, sweet prince." Because it sounds so silly. And they're not quoting Hamlet. They're quoting The Big Lebowski, whether or not they know it.
It isn't silly in Hamlet.
No, it's not silly in Hamlet.
Okay,
There's
so
nothing silly
Donnie's
about Hamlet.
remains, which just got sprayed into the dude's face and all over his glasses.
I want
in
those
the wind.
sunglasses.
So Donnie's remains are part of a 3-movie-long Coen Brothers joke
I know this.
on Steve Buscemi, where his characters continually get smaller and smaller and smaller in their deaths.
Yes, the characters die. Steve Buscemi's characters die, and his remains
get
become
smaller and smaller. So in the first one, in Miller's Crossing from 1990,
yes, great movie.
we show I haven't seen that one, but we see him as a dead body, and then in Fargo in '96, we see his dead body as only a severed leg. And then in LEBOWSKI in 98, he's just in a Folgers tin of ashes. So they just keep making him smaller. It's funny. And I like this hug here. I like this hug between Walter and the dude.
I think I aspire to be somewhat dude-like.
I read another little, fan theory online about the dude and Walter.
Okay.
Where Walter is a personification of the Old Testament and the dude is a personification of the New Testament.
Like a Christ figure?
Right. Where
Okay.
Walter, he's, Jewish, right? So just
Wrathful,
take that
yeah.
for the Old Testament. He's violent like Jehovah or Yahweh or whatever you want to call the old version of God in the Old Testament. He also is really condemning of women who are sexually promiscuous.
Yes.
He calls her dirty names.
He does.
I think he calls her a bitch and some other things. So, and then the dude,
among other things,
the dude is like the New Testament. He's like Jesus in the New Testament. It's all feel good and peace and loving,
forgiving. I guess
forgiving.
Yeah.
And he even specifically with Bunny, he refers to her as like that poor girl. Like it's
that poor woman.
Right, so in the contrast, I can see where that comes from. I think that's a fun little fan theory.
I didn't talk about this before, but earlier in the movie, the stranger here, played by Sam Elliott, asks the dude why he has to curse so much. Do you know why he asks him that?
Why?
I said something earlier about the stranger's, Sam Elliott's character, the stranger, in this being somewhat meta. Sam Elliott is kind of famous for being an actor who's played a lot of cowboys.
The dude abides.
He says the dude abides there, yeah. He's played a lot of cowboys and a lot of westerns, but one thing that he doesn't do is he doesn't curse in movies.
He doesn't curse in movies.
He doesn't curse in movies.
So he's like Will Smith.
Right. And he doesn't pretend he's kind of like Will Smith curses in movies. He doesn't curse in his raps.
No, I was talking about raps.
Okay.
That cigar, I bite it, I don't light it.
Right.
It's for the look.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh my God. But yeah, it is a little bit meta in that Sam Elliott he's known not to curse in movies. He's a very strong man of faith, a very strong Christian man, and he doesn't participate in movies that are, I guess, that he would feel conflicted about, or that he has some kind of reservations, faith-based reservations about. And he even says something in this little ending monologue here where he says, it was a pretty good story. I liked it. Well, parts of it anyway, is how he puts it.
There's a religion, dudism.
I've heard that.
Please
tell me about dudism.
On their website, it's devoted to Jeff Bridges' character and the philosophy of how he lives his life.
Sure.
And on the website, they say it's the slowest growing religion in the world.
Don't they know it's just existentialism?
I guess not. Because there was something, I read something, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyways, they say they preach non-preachiness and practice as little as possible. But there are over 220,000 Dudist priests in the world, ordained priests through their website.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
That's magnificent.
Also, another trivia fact, Donnie wears personalized bowling shirts throughout the whole movie, but none of them say Donnie.
I knew that. That's a nice little touch. Actually, Dude hardly ever wears bowling shirts in the movie, but when he does, specifically at the very end, the last one that we saw him in was a bowling shirt that said Medina Sod on it. And according to a local newspaper in Akron, Ohio, the dude wears that bowling shirt that he wears is a real 1960s bowling shirt that was found in a thrift store in Los Angeles, and it belonged to a real man by the name of Art Myers, who was the foreman at Medina Sod in Medina, Ohio. They just picked it up in some thrift shop in L.A., and it still says Art on it. It says the man's name that it belonged to on there, and some little newspaper was like, oh, I guess some reporter was like, oh, I know that shirt. I know that man, or I did.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, The Big Sleep was set in L.A., just like this movie. I mean, which is not surprising because I think a lot of noir films were filmed in Hollywood and
it's
set
just the
in
nature
Hollywood,
of
right?
Yeah, the old Hollywood system is kind of like that.
But anyways, though, that's another tie-in. Also, we didn't talk about Carter Burwell. I guess he didn't do a lot
of stuff. I think. I mean, his contribution is notable,
mostly
and
in
it's good, but
like design, like sound design and stuff in the background and stuff. But has he done all the Coen Brothers movies?
You know, that's a good
question.
He's
done a lot of them. I know he did Fargo, Miller's Crossing, No Country for Old Men, A Serious Man. But
I said T-Bone Walker earlier. The music supervisor for this movie was a guy named T-Bone Burnett. And I think that he really deserves the praise for putting the soundtrack together.
I love Carter Burwell. I think he's fantastic. Carter Burwell is Jessica score. That is definite Jessica score, like listen to when I'm writing or driving or whatever. He is known for, besides the Coen Brothers movies, he's done things like he's so varied. He's done so many movies, like Being John Malkovich. He did A Knight's Tale. He did Where the Wild Things Are.
Wow.
He did Airheads. He did Twilight and The Breaking Dawn Parts 1 and 2, which surprisingly, is good, even though
weirdly they also have pretty good soundtracks, like
right?
compiled soundtracks.
Guess what else he did? Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
The movie?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. We watched that.
He did this. He did what? And there's not a lot. Like most of that movie is like
pop songs
soundtracks,
and stuff like that,
right?
Yeah.
But what there is, he did. Isn't that cool?
Wow, interesting. So I talked about T-Bone Burnett a little bit. He was the music consultant or the music supervisor. He's actually credited as music archivist because he didn't want to seem like he was in a managerial position in any kind of way. But he helped the Coen brothers establish the dude's taste in music. And he selected many of the existing songs in the movie and also suggested that the dude's hatred toward the Eagles, because he himself is not a fan. Burnett is not a fan of the Eagles either. And one of the Eagles members, Glenn Frey, was reportedly so dismayed about this that he once even angrily confronted Jeff Bridges when they met at a party. Which is kind of the opposite of what Metallica did. Earlier in the movie, the dude says that he was a roadie for Metallica, and he says that they were a bunch of assholes. Like straight up calls them a bunch of assholes. And a couple of the band members from Metallica met Jeff Bridges at some point, or maybe not met him, but they reportedly were fond of being mentioned in the movie. They really liked being called assholes by the dude.
Yeah, well, I guess they're, cooler people.
It is funny, like, how the whole Eagles thing comes about, though, because toward the beginning of the movie, when we're introduced to Jesus Quintana's character, we get the, the cover of Hotel California in Spanish. And, that's a character that our main characters don't like. And then later in the movie, when he's in the taxi cab, he tells the cab driver that he hates the fucking Beatles. Please turn off the radio. I hate the fucking Beatles. I don't know. It's callbacks. That's one of the things that makes this movie work so well.
Good writing. That's why it's a good movie.
So you like The Big Lebowski?
Yeah, of course. I love this movie.
I love this movie so much.
It's a great movie. You did a good job. You picked a good one.
Awesome. We'll see if I can do it again in a couple weeks.
Better than Dumb and Dumber.
So
certainly smarter.
That will bring us to the end of another episode of the Popcorn Poops podcast. As usual, you can find us on our blog at popcornpoops.blogspot.com. You can also find us on iTunes, where we'd really, really appreciate it if you subscribe to us, leave us a little rating and a review. We'd really appreciate that, especially if you like us. We like those good reviews.
Yeah, those would be really great.
We don't have any so far. So.
Well, I mean, that's good. We don't have any negative reviews.
That's like no news is good news, right? You can also find us on Twitter. Follow us at Popcorn Poops. You can like us on Facebook, and we update both of those very frequently and drop little hints about what movies we're going to do next. You can also find us individually on Twitter. Where can we find you on the internet?
I'm at Jesse Casper. That's Jesse with a Y and Casper with a K.
And I am at Dusty Cram Cram. And until next time, Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
We are the Popcorn